Welcome to episode 72 on the Live Blissed Out podcast. Did you know that most people think with their fears and insecurities instead of using their minds? We don't like to live in an uncomfortable state, but that is the only place where personal growth can occur. Hello, action takers. Welcome to Live Blissed Out, a podcast where I have inspirational and informational conversations with business owners and subject matter experts to help us get the scoop and the lowdown on a variety of topics. Tired of hesitating or making decisions without having the big picture? Want to be in the know? Then this is the place to go. I'm your host, Marissa Houston, helping achieve bliss through awareness and action. Thanks for joining me. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Joining me is Terry Tucker. Terry has been an NCAA Division I college basketball player, a Citadel cadet, a marketing executive, a hospital administrator, an undercover narcotics investigator, a SWAT team hostage negotiator, a high school basketball coach, a business owner, a motivational speaker, author, and most recently, a cancer warrior. He and his wife have lived all over the United States and currently reside in Colorado with their daughter and Wheaten Terrier, Maggie. In 2019, Terry started the website Motivational Check to help others find and lead their uncommon and extraordinary lives. To learn more, visit motivationalcheck.com. Terry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marissa. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you too, Terry, and I appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us. I know that you wrote a book recently, and it's called Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Lead Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. And you have led exactly that, an uncommon and extraordinary life full of ups and downs and everything in between. And I think that story is so relevant to the conversation essentially that we're going to have in terms of how you've overcome a lot of those obstacles that you've had to deal with. I'd like to start by getting to know more about your story and how you got here.
Sure. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, and I'm the oldest of three boys. I am 6'8" and played college basketball. I have another brother who's 6'7", who was a pitcher on the Notre Dame baseball team. And then my middle brother is 6'6", and he was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the National Basketball Association back in 1983. And then my dad was 6'5". So if you sat behind our family growing up in church, there wasn't a prayer's chance you were going to see anything that was going on whatsoever. And then my mom was like 5'8", so she was the boss of the whole family. So it really didn't matter how tall or how big we were. Mom was still the boss. Athletics, specifically basketball, was an important part of my life growing up, and I attended college at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina on a basketball scholarship, despite having 3 knee surgeries in high school. When I graduated from college, I moved home to find a job. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, and I was all set to make my mark on the world with my newly obtained business administration degree. Fortunately, I was able to find that first job in the marketing department of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain in Dublin, Ohio. But unfortunately, I ended up living with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mother care for my grandmother and my father, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. In my professional career, I've had quite a few jobs. I've been a marketing executive. I've been a hospital administrator. I've been a customer service manager. I've been a police officer, an undercover drug investigator, a SWAT team hostage negotiator, a school security consultant, a high school basketball coach, a motivational speaker, most recently an author, and for the last almost 9 years, a cancer warrior. And then finally, my wife and I have been married for over 27 years, and our daughter is a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is a lieutenant in the newly formed United States Space Force. So in a nutshell, that's kind of my life and where we will probably pick up with the most devastating thing that's ever happened to me in my life.
And it sounds like you've just reinvented yourself over and over. And through each experience, you got a new perspective and you got new skills. And that takes courage in a sense, because change is difficult for a lot of us. And just the prospect of trying new things is scary.
Oh, totally. I mean, I think we all know this. Our brains are hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure. So the status quo, the way things are right now, to the brain, all that is good. When you start saying, hey, I'm going to go from being a suit and tie Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 kind of guy to now I'm going to be a police officer where I'm going to work nights and weekends. That takes a whole shift in not only your thinking, but your family dynamics and your friends. I've had an opportunity, and much of it has been because of my family. My wife has always been the primary breadwinner, and if she lost a job or found another job somewhere else that was better, a lot of times it was time for our family to move. I supported her in her dreams, and she certainly has supported me in mine and has taken care of me over the last 9 years of my battle with cancer.
It sounds to me like you accepted the fact that life will throw you curveballs. And when they do, you just have to pivot. You have to figure out, how do I adjust to this new normal? Things are different. And that change happens to all of us in different capacities, but it's still something that, whether we like it or not, happens. And so then it's just a matter of, how do we approach it? Do we approach it in fear, or do we say, look, maybe this is a positive. Maybe I can turn it on its head and figure out a way to make this beneficial. What inspired you to write your book?
The book was born out of two conversations that I had. One was with a former basketball player friend of mine who had moved to Denver with her boyfriend. And my wife and I had dinner with her and her boyfriend a couple times. And I remember telling her, I said, I'm really excited to watch you find and live your purpose. And there was kind of that pause. And she came back to me with, well, Coach, what do you think my purpose is? And I told her, I said, I don't know what your purpose is. That's what your life should be about. That's what you need to find, to search for, to be open to. And then once you find it, you need to live it. You need to jump in with both feet, not stick your toe in the water and see what happens. And I could tell I really touched a nerve with her, and she really wasn't sure where she was going to go with that. So that was one conversation. The other conversation was a young man from the Citadel where I'd graduated, who was on the basketball team, connected with me on LinkedIn. And he said, could you give me some ideas of what you think are the most important things that I should learn to not only be successful in my job, but also to be successful in life? And I didn't want to just fire back, get up early and work hard. I wanted to really think about it and to go deeper. So I did. I spent some time writing things down, thinking about my life, thinking about the lives of other people, and thinking about certainly my experience with cancer. And I came up with these 10 principles that I really believe were anchored in bedrock. I mean, these were things that you could take into your heart, into your soul. And if you lived your life by these principles, you would have a successful and a significant life. After I wrote the book, I really started thinking about success. We all want to be successful. We want to be a successful podcaster. We want to be a successful coach, a successful teacher, or a successful author, whatever that is. But then I started thinking about success is what we do. We are successful. Significance is what we do for other people, how we take our success and use it to be significant in the lives of other people. And I think we can be both. I think you can be a successful individual and a significant individual. So I had all these principles and things like that. And then it was a matter of, now what do I do with them? And then I started looking at the principles. I'm like, I have a life story about that, or I know somebody who would have a life story about this, or I read a story about this. Eventually, it got to the point where I had enough material to put a book together. And the interesting thing about the book is that I literally wrote it April of 2020 when I had my leg amputated till June of 2020 when I began chemotherapy for the tumors in my lungs. So I wrote this book in the span of about 3 months. And I always say, and I really believe this, that I wrote the book, but I believe it was inspired by God. I really think God was kind of like, we're going to write a book. Just sit down here and I'm going to tell you what to write. I never heard voices or anything like that. But at the same time, I really felt that I was kind of being guided on what I was writing. And that was based on something that was much bigger than me.
It led you to putting down what was on your mind and what you realized you wanted to put down on paper. You talk about the 10 principles of leading an uncommon and extraordinary life. Now, those are big words. When you say uncommon and extraordinary, How do you get to that point? What do they mean?
Uncommon and extraordinary, you're right. Those are two incredibly big words. And since I've had cancer, I've really felt my purpose has been to help others find their purpose or their why in life. I recall a quote that I heard a long time ago from Mark Twain, who said that the two most important days of our lives are the day we're born and the day we figure out why. When I speak to groups, I ask them, do you have any idea why you were put on this earth? And sometimes I'll take that a step further and I'll ask, do you know why you were born at this time? Why weren't you born 5,000 years ago or 50,000 years in the future? There's a reason that you were born, and that reason involves finding and living your purpose. I believe that we're all destined to live uncommon and extraordinary lives, and that has absolutely nothing to do with what kind of job we have, how much money we make, what kind of car we drive, etc. We are not all born with the same gifts and talents, but we all have the ability to become the best person that we're capable of becoming. The problem is that most people take an unintentional approach to living. And as a result of living a casual life, their dreams, their goals, their ambitions become a casualty of that unplanned living. During the 8, I guess almost 9 years now that I've been battling cancer, I've had plenty of time to think about my own death. And after I die, I can't imagine standing in the presence of our Creator, whoever or whatever you believe that entity to be, and being unable to account for the gifts and the talents that I was born with that I didn't use to make the world a better place. And during my life, and certainly as a police officer and the number of people that I've known who've had cancer over the years, I've seen, unfortunately, many people die. And it's been my experience that the people who die, what we would call peaceful deaths, are those who utilize their time on this earth to find and live that purpose. On the other hand, many of the people who I observe go kicking and screaming from this world, people who want another day or another month, whatever, those are people who never did anything with their lives. They never saw the urgency of living their uncommon and extraordinary purpose. They never took a chance on their dreams. They never took the time to figure out who they were, why they were here, and what they were supposed to do with their lives. There's a Native American Blackfoot proverb that I heard years ago that I just love, and it goes like this. When you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. The only way to find your purpose is to search it out, to try things that make you uncomfortable, to fight against the status quo, to experience things that frankly scare you. Finding your why or your purpose is important because it's the reason you were born. And the only way to discover that reason is to be open to it and search for it with your heart.
We are so focused on what we're doing that we don't see anything outside of that. We're so one-track minded, and opportunities come in front of us and we ignore them. It's just easier to keep doing what we're doing because we're comfortable doing it. Just listening, being intuitive, and accepting those signs or whatever to be more open to it and just say, why not? Let me try it. It's kind of scary, but what's the worst that can happen? I'm going to give it a try and see where it takes me.
Absolutely. It's funny. I remember Ralph Waldo Emerson once said that if you're afraid to do something, that you should do it. I think, as you described, an impediment or an obstacle that prevents us from finding and living our purpose. And that obstacle is us. To our minds, the status quo is comfortable and should be left alone. You know, we all know people that should be working somewhere else in another job, but for some reason, they just stay right where they are. And I would suggest that's because every time they look for new employment, their brain kicks in and says, hey, things are comfortable here and you're making good money and you understand the work. And you know what? You go somewhere else, you may not get along with your coworkers. Whatever the reason, to the brain, a new job presents all types of uncertainty and uncomfortableness.
A lot of people complain they're not happy in their jobs.
Exactly. If you're in that job and you can't stand it, and it would make sense for you to explore new opportunities, your brain is going to fight you on making that change. I dedicated a whole chapter in my book to this next sentence. The problem with most people is they think with their fears and their insecurities instead of using their mind. We don't like to live in an uncomfortable state. but that's the only place where real growth can occur. You know, when I was a high school basketball coach, I used to always tell my team that they needed to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Talk about dating yourself. I'm really going to date myself now. Back in 1976, there was a U.S. gold medal winning Olympic swimmer by the name of Shirley Babashoff, and she had one of the greatest quotes that I ever heard, and this is what she said: "Winners think about what they want to happen, and losers think about what they don't want to happen." Winners can override their brains, and they can focus on the things that they want to occur. Losers focus on the negative aspects of competition, and they're not able to see the positive qualities of pursuing a goal or a dream. I try to put this in perspective where people can easily understand this. If you were to go into a gym and pick up a 10-pound weight and do 10 arm curls, but you didn't find that movement difficult, then your muscle will never grow. However, if you go into that same gym, you pick up that same 10-pound weight and you do arm curls until you exhaust your muscle and you can't do another repetition, then you are stressing that muscle. And as a result, it will grow and it will get stronger. That same tactic works with your mind. If you stress or push your mind by doing things that are uncomfortable, then it will grow, it will develop, and you will become a stronger and more resolute individual.
You know, that quote we always hear, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If we go by that approach, we'll never experience new things. The bottom line is, if you just accept the status quo and don't strive to improve, then you'll never get those additional experiences. You'll never get better. You'll never experience new things because you're just happy and comfortable with where you're at.
Absolutely. And nobody grows staying where they're at. And let's face it, in life, you're either growing or you're dying. We all know people that literally, I call them dead. You know, they do the same thing every day. They get up at the same time. They go to the same job. They do their job. They come home. They sit in their easy chair. They go to bed, and they just do it over and over again. Those are common and ordinary people. And common and ordinary people never do anything with their lives. So don't sit there. If there's something you want to do and it scares you, then my advice to you is go do it. At least try it and see what happens. You've got two choices. You're either going to win or you're going to learn. There's nothing bad. I'm going to try this. I loved it. It was great. Or I tried it and I learned something about myself or my abilities or whatever that is. So you learn something. I don't want to do it again, but I learned something about myself. It doesn't get any better than that. But if you don't try anything, you'll never grow. You'll never get better.
There's always exceptions to the rules. So there are people, they're probably listening to us right now going, I like being ordinary. I like my routines. I like knowing when I'm going to get my coffee and what kind of coffee I'm going to have. If you're happy and truly content doing those things and maybe just surrounding yourself with good friends and family or whatever, and that's all you want to do, and that fills your cup, there's nothing wrong with that. We're talking about the people that have regrets, the ones that wake up and go, am I going to live another day like this? Like, I'm miserable. I don't like my job. I don't like the circumstances. I don't like the people around me. And rather than looking at ways to overcome it, they feel sorry for themselves, or they say, well, I guess this is it. I mean, I can't expect anything more. I'm going to settle.
Correct. What I'm going to give you now is, at least at this point in my life, sort of my truths. And I have a Post-it note that is on my desk that I'm looking at right now, and I look at every day when I sit at my desk. And it has 3 sentences on it. The first one is, you need to control your mind or it will control you. The second one is, embrace your pain and suffering and use it to make you a stronger and more determined individual. And the third one is, as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. I look at those every day. I'm in the middle of a clinical trial right now, which the drug is extremely hard on my body. And I had a nurse come in to talk to me, and she said, Terry, nobody would think anything less of you if you stopped this drug, if you got off this clinical trial, because it is so hard on your body. And I looked at her and I said, you don't know me. They may take me off this study or I may die on this study, but I will never quit this study because that's not me. That's not my makeup. I am a person who takes pain and suffering and turns it inside. I don't try to run from it. I'm like, give it to me because I'm going to burn it as fuel to make me tougher, to make me stronger, to make me handle this. Because, you know, we're all going to have pain in our life. And it's going to end. Eventually, the pain we all experience somehow is going to end. But if I quit, that pain will always be with me. So I'm going to take that pain. I'm going to take as much as I can, and I'm never going to quit. But that's just how I'm made up. I realize there are a lot of people that like, no, it's pain. I don't want to do that. I want to get as far away from it as I can. But I found that pain, that suffering, internalizing it, taking it in, that makes me a stronger person. May not make you a stronger person, but for me, it makes me tougher. It makes me stronger. It makes me more determined.
Given the fact that you have had major struggles with cancer, all the things you're going through in your life in the past and today, what helps you overcome that hopelessness? When other people, for example, that go through these terrible experiences, they tend to cowl or they feel sorry for themselves or they get angry. They go through different emotions, and you are positive and you're always looking at being hopeful and trying new things and being open to new ideas. Why do you have that? And perhaps other people are missing that element.
I think the best way to answer your question is with a story. The boxer Mike Tyson once said that everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And there was a particular instance during my cancer experience where I think I really got hit in the mouth and things just seemed extremely bleak for me. And this hopelessness or helplessness crept into my life in 2017. I had just completed a final round of a biologic therapy, which left me exhausted. And a week later, I was diagnosed with a disease called pseudo-gout when my right knee swelled to the size of a cantaloupe. And the fluid in my knee contained calcium crystals, which were acting like miniature knives, just stabbing all around the inside of the joint every time I moved. And that was followed up maybe 2 weeks later with a reaction that I had to the biologic medication that gave me a blood clot in my lung and fluid around the sac of my heart. I woke up in the middle of the night convinced that I was having a heart attack with difficulty breathing, chest pains, and my wife took me to the emergency room. And as I was laying in the ER with doctors and nurses and technicians performing all kinds of tests, I remember feeling so depleted, both mentally and physically, that I looked at my wife, literally with tears rolling down my cheeks, and I just begged her to let me die. I just wanted out of my body that seemed to be continually attacking me. And it was at that moment, and I wish I could say I knew why this happened, but I don't know why. But it was at that moment that I remembered reading an article written about the owner of a professional sports team who paid a United States Navy SEAL, probably some of the toughest men in the world, to come and live with his family for a month and teach them to use their mind to do more than their bodies ever thought they could do. And part of this training was what he called the 40% rule. And this rule states that if your mind or your body are telling you that you're through and that you can't go on, that you are only at 40% of your maximum, and you still have another 60% left in reserve. And as horrible as I felt, I remember blocking out everything that was going on around me and just kind of going inside myself and telling myself that I had so much more left to give. Even though my body was declaring I was at the end of my rope and I just wanted to let go, I forced my mind to inform my body, literally, to tie a knot in the end of that rope and simply hang on. Realizing that I had another 60% left in reserve literally saved my life by forcing my mind and my body to draw on those reserves that I still possessed. We all have those stockpiles waiting to be used if we ever get to the point where we think we're finished, where we're done, where I can't go on. I'd encourage your listeners to draw on those reserves if they ever feel that they can't continue. Because I can speak from personal experience that even when you don't think you can move forward, you still have so much more left to give.
Essentially, what you're saying is you were continuing to think outside of yourself. It wasn't just, woe is me, I'm in a bad situation, this is not what I want. Who wants that? Nobody wants to have pain and suffering in their life. But you said, well, I'm not going to let that define me. There's still more. It sounds to me like you're looking forward. You're always looking ahead to see what else life can bring.
And I am. I am probably, if you listen to my oncologist, at the tail end of my life. I probably don't have a whole lot more left in terms of time on this earth. And people have asked me about that. And the one thing I say, and I know this is going to sound crazy, and I'm sure every psychiatrist or psychologist that's listening will probably be beating my door down, but I am almost, for lack of a better word, excited to see what's on the other side of this life. I don't want to die. Don't get me wrong. I have no plans to die. I will fight like crazy to make sure I stay here, and I'll give everything I have. But I'm not afraid to see what's on the other side. I'm not afraid to go wherever we go when we leave this world. And I think the reason that I feel that way is that I found my purpose in life and I lived that purpose. And so as a result, I did what God put me here to do. And now I am finished with that, or I'm coming to the end of that. And now it's time to move on to something else, whatever that be. I believe that because I believe in God. I have very strong faith. I know other people may not. But for me, I'm not afraid to die, and I'm not afraid to see what's on the other side of this.
And so it's going back full circle to what you talked about in the beginning, was that you need to live your purpose. And that's why it's so important, because then you don't live with regret. You live with gratitude. You live with appreciation for the time that you have been given, and you've been able to make the most of it. You're at peace with the choices that you made.
And I am. When I found out that the cancer had come back, that I needed to have my leg amputated and I had these tumors in my lungs, I went with my wife to the cemetery and to the mortuary, and I planned my entire funeral. And some people were like, well, that's defeatist. And I said, well, no, that's a gift to my family. Everybody dies, but not everybody really lives. So we're all going to die. And why would I have my family running around when they're exhausted and they're emotionally drained trying to plan my funeral? Why can't I just do that now and get that over with so that when I die, as we all will, they can just make one phone call and it's all taken care of? So for me, it was a gift, I guess, to my family as to, hey, you know what? This is all taken care of. Don't worry about it. Now let's get on with the business of living and not worry about dying. We're done with that. We know what to do. Now let's get on with the business of living.
Terry, it's funny you say that, because I don't know if you've ever heard of a book called Swedish Death Cleaning. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not.
There's an actual book, and I can't remember the name of the author, but it's essentially teaching people how to organize their life in such a way that if today were their last day on earth, that they wouldn't be a burden to somebody else.
Okay.
So they get rid of all the things that don't matter, because we don't take all that with us. So these are just all material things. And then what happens is when something unexpected happens and we don't know when it's going to happen, it's terrible. All of a sudden, somebody has to come into your house and deal with all these material things. And now you're a burden to them, because now they have to make all these decisions on top of the grieving and all the other things they have to go through without even knowing about that book. You're thinking along those same lines. You're saying, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to leave the people that I love with another responsibility. I want to make sure everything's handled, because they are going to suffer regardless. Make it a little easier on them.
Absolutely. There's a great story about Alexander the Great, who, as he was dying, he brings his counselors and generals together, and he said, I want you to carry out my final 3 wishes. And he said, the first wish is I want only my physicians to carry my coffin to the grave. My second wish is I want the road to the cemetery just strewn with gold and silver and precious stones. And my third wish is I want my hands hanging out of my coffin. And one of his counselors says, you know, Alexander, those are pretty strange wishes. Why do you want those to be your final 3 wishes? And he says, well, number one, I want my doctors to carry my casket to the grave because I want people to realize that no doctor can cure anything. They can only help the body in healing itself. And people shouldn't be foolish in how they live their lives in terms of exercise and what they eat and drink and things like that. He says, secondly, I've spent my entire life conquering other countries, and I've got all this gold, all this silver, all these precious stones, and none of that is coming with me to the next life. It is foolish and basically folly to think that you're important because you have money or status or power, because in the end, you're going to occupy the same small piece of dirt that the pauper who has absolutely nothing, who's buried beside you. And then finally, his third wish, I want my hands to be hanging outside of my casket because I want people to realize that I came into this world empty-handed and I leave the same way. The only thing that we can take with us beyond the grave, the only thing that is important, in all honesty, why we're here, is love. How much love can we put into this world? How much love can we show to each other? And in today's society and with everything that's going on, I think that's a really important message. And it's a message that I'm committed to giving and putting out there as much as I can with whatever time I have left.
Terry, what is your purpose, what you want to achieve in this world?
I believe my purpose is to put as much love and positivity back into the world with whatever time I have left. I've been doing a number of podcasts to try to do that. I've been promoting the book and things like that. And I've really been fortunate because I've been able to connect with a lot of people that were unsure of where they were going, of what they were supposed to do with their life. And I've been able to, in some small way, give a little bit of advice that I hope will start them down the path to living their uncommon and extraordinary life.
Terry, I couldn't agree with you more. This book, it's going to go deeper into these ideas that you want to share with everybody. Could you give us more information about how we learn more about you, your story, your book, or anything you want to share with our listeners?
The one central place where all this is available is I have a website. It's called motivationalcheck.com. That is a place where you can order the book. You can get the book on Amazon. You can get it on barnesandnoble.com. You can get it on Apple iBooks. It's in an ebook form. It's also in hardcover and paperback. Every day I put up a new thought for the day. I have a Monday morning motivational message on Mondays that I put up. Also, I put up videos and stories and things like that. And they're all short. I realize people are busy and don't have a lot of time. So you can go get a little bit of inspiration or motivation and do that. And also my Twitter account, my Facebook account, and my LinkedIn account are all linked to motivationalcheck.com. That's probably the easiest way to find everything about me. And if you want to send me a note or something, motivationalcheck@aol.com is my email.
And I want to say that it is a true honor to have this opportunity to talk to you today about your ideas and what you want to share with the listeners and the world about how to live a better life or more fulfilled life. It's something that I am just so grateful for.
Well, thank you, Marissa, for having me on. I hope your audience got something positive from this conversation that we had.
I have no doubt. Thank you so much, Terry.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode of Live Blissed Out. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Terry Tucker for being my guest. If you have a question or comment for a future episode, all you have to do is go to speakpipe.com/LBOVM or click the link in the show notes to leave a brief audio message. If you find value in our show, please visit liveblисsedout.com to reach out, subscribe, and share on social media. This show is made possible through listeners like you. Thank you. So long for now, and remember to keep moving forward.